Let's be honest. We all shy away from difficult things. We avoid them, delay them, negotiate with them, and convince ourselves that tomorrow will somehow be easier than today. But what if those very challenges you avoid are the key to unlocking your true potential? What if the obstacles you tiptoe around are the very things that could transform your mind, your discipline, and your entire life? What if willpower isn't something you wait for, but something you build? In this journey, we're going to break down a truth most people never confront. Motivation comes and goes, sometimes powerful, sometimes weak, but never consistent enough to build the life you dream of. Relying on motivation alone is like relying on the weather. You can't predict it. You can't depend on it. You can't build a future on something that fluctuates with your mood. That's why the world's strongest, calmest, most disciplined people don't chase motivation. They create conditions that make discipline inevitable. And it all begins with one idea: the daily hard thing, a small, deliberate act of discomfort, chosen on purpose, repeated consistently, designed to strengthen your mind the same way a gym strengthens your body. A cold shower, 5 minutes of focused reading, walking when you'd rather drive, finishing a task before scrolling your phone, initiating the uncomfortable conversation, saying no when your old self would have said yes. These aren't punishments. They're micro-rebellions against the weakness that once controlled you. They're subtle reminders that you are capable of more than your excuses allow. And over time, these hard things don't just make you disciplined. They make you powerful. They make you grounded. They make you someone who can't be swayed by moods, setbacks, or temporary feelings. This podcast is your guide, not to hype, not to motivation that fades by next week, but to a new identity you build piece by piece. An identity where your mind becomes your ally, not your enemy. Where discomfort becomes fuel, not fear. Where willpower becomes a skill, not a struggle. So let me ask you again, are you ready to stop wishing for willpower and start building it? If your answer is yes, then breathe for a moment. Chapter 1: The Myth of Motivation. It always starts the same way. A burst of inspiration, a spark of excitement, a bold promise to yourself that this time will be different. You feel charged, focused, unstoppable, until the feeling disappears. And it always disappears. For years, people have been taught to chase that feeling, as if motivation were a fuel you could refill every morning with a motivational quote, a podcast clip, or a quick hit of self-help adrenaline. But motivation is unreliable by design. It is a biological surge, not a strategy. And when you understand that truth, you finally understand why most goals collapse long before they succeed. Motivation fades because it was never meant to last. The brain is wired to conserve energy. It rewards you with small spikes of dopamine when you imagine a better future, but it withdraws that dopamine when action becomes difficult. This is why imagining the goal feels good, but pursuing it feels heavy. It's why starting is easy and staying consistent feels impossible. Motivation makes you dream, but motivation does not make you disciplined. The human brain works like a battery. It has a limited supply of mental energy each day. Psychologists call this ego depletion, the gradual draining of willpower as you make decisions, resist temptations, manage emotions, and deal with discomfort. Every one of these actions costs something. This is why you can feel strong in the morning but defeated at night. It's why you can make good choices early in the day and terrible ones later. Your willpower is not infinite. It runs out. And when it runs out, motivation cannot save you. There is also decision fatigue, the cost of making choice after choice, until your brain seeks the easiest path simply to survive pressure. When your energy is drained, you're drawn toward comfort, shortcuts, and familiar routines. And comfort is the silent enemy of progress. Comfort convinces you to quit early. Comfort whispers that you can start tomorrow. Comfort pretends to be kindness, but it is resistance in disguise. This is why relying on motivation is a setup for failure. Not because you are weak, not because you lack talent, but because motivation was never meant to carry the weight of long-term change. It's like trying to light a fireplace with a match. You get heat for a moment, but the fire dies fast. Real change requires something stronger, something stable, something that does not collapse the moment your feelings shift. People who succeed at anything, fitness, business, discipline, creativity, do not rely on motivation. They rely on systems. Systems remove decision-making. Systems reduce emotional friction. Systems protect you from the instability of your own moods. But before you build a system, you need something deeper. You need to train your mind to tolerate discomfort. This is where the truth becomes uncomfortable. Human beings naturally avoid pain. It's a survival mechanism built into us long before modern comfort existed. When something feels difficult, unfamiliar, or challenging, your brain sends signals urging you to retreat. Not because the challenge is dangerous, but because discomfort feels like a threat to the primitive parts of your mind. Modern life has made this instinct even stronger. We live in a world designed to eliminate discomfort at every turn. One swipe brings entertainment. One tap brings food. One click provides distraction. Your brain is surrounded by convenience engineered to make hard things optional. But when hard things become optional, growth becomes optional too. This is why deliberate discomfort is so powerful. It is the intentional practice of doing things you would normally avoid, not because you enjoy pain, but because you are training your mind to stop running from it. Think of it like progressive overload in the gym. You do not lift heavy on day one. You start small. You challenge the muscle. You let it adapt. And over time, the weight that once felt impossible becomes normal. Your mind works exactly the same way. When you practice discomfort every day, even in small doses, you expand your mental capacity. Hard things become easier. Resistance becomes quieter. Fear loses shape. And the discipline you once struggled to maintain becomes part of your identity. This is the truth high achievers understand. Willpower is not a rare gift. It is a trained response, a built pattern, a strengthened circuit. You build it through repetition, not inspiration, through small challenges, not huge leaps, through consistency, not intensity. But here's the real breakthrough. You do not need massive courage to change your life. You only need small, controlled, repeated acts of discomfort. These micro-acts create neurological adaptations. They strengthen the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for self-control and long-term decision-making. They reduce the power of the amygdala, the part that creates fear and avoidance. They reshape your identity from someone who avoids hard things to someone who does them naturally. Every day you face discomfort, you build a new version of yourself. Every day you choose the harder path, your threshold for challenge expands. Every day you push through resistance, you break the myth that motivation is the key, because now you understand. The key is not motivation. The key is mental conditioning. Deliberate discomfort is not punishment. It is preparation. It trains your mind to stay steady when life becomes unpredictable. It sharpens your emotional tolerance. It builds a shield around your priorities. It makes you unshakable in a world filled with distractions. Most people wait for motivation before acting, but the people who rise, the people who grow, the people who break their limits, they act first and let motivation catch up later. They start when they don't feel like it. They push through when others stop. They understand that motivation follows action, not the other way around. And now you know it too. You don't need to wait for the perfect moment. You don't need to feel ready. You don't need to trust motivation. You need a system built on deliberate discomfort, a daily practice that strengthens the mind the way training strengthens the body, a small, consistent ritual that proves to yourself that you can choose the harder path every day. Your transformation begins here, not with a burst of energy, not with a motivational speech, but with a shift in strategy, a shift in identity, a shift in how you face the world. You don't need more motivation. You need a system. And that system begins with the smallest act of controlled difficulty, micro-challenges, the foundation of real, lasting, unstoppable willpower. Chapter 2. The Micro-Challenge Method. Growth rarely arrives in dramatic moments. It doesn't crash through the door with thunder or a revelation. It shows up quietly, in the tiny decisions you make when no one is watching. Discipline is not built through heroic bursts of effort. It is built through small acts of intentional difficulty performed with quiet consistency. This is the power of the micro-challenge method. A micro-challenge is simple. One small, difficult action each day. Not a life-changing obstacle. Not a monumental task. Just a controlled spark of discomfort, deliberately chosen, consistently repeated. The size of the challenge does not matter. The consistency does. Because the brain adapts to repetition far more than intensity. Hard things become easier, not because you become more motivated, but because your nervous system becomes familiar with discomfort. Your mind learns not to panic at resistance. Your body learns not to retreat when the task feels uncomfortable. You slowly teach yourself that discomfort is not a threat. It's a signal that growth is happening. This is not philosophy, it is neuroscience. Each time you perform a micro-challenge, you strengthen the neural pathways responsible for discipline and self-control. Neurons that fire together, wire together. When you choose the harder option, you reinforce the circuits that allow you to choose it again tomorrow. Over time, those circuits become stronger, faster, more automatic. You become the type of person who acts with discipline instinctively rather than forcing yourself into it. Habit formation follows this exact pattern. The brain seeks patterns that repeat. When a behavior is repeated consistently, it begins to transition from effortful to automatic. This is called chunking. Your brain stores a behavior as a streamlined loop, reducing the cognitive load required to perform it. This is why brushing your teeth requires no willpower, but starting a new routine feels heavy. Your brain hasn't built the pathway yet. Micro-challenges harness this science. By repeating small, difficult tasks daily, you reduce the mental resistance associated with doing hard things. You shrink the activation energy, the energy required to start. And once starting becomes easier, consistency becomes effortless. A micro-challenge is effective for one reason. It forces you to act before your brain has time to negotiate, because negotiation is where discipline dies. Should I do it now or later? Is it really necessary today? Do I have time? Do I feel like it? Every question creates friction. Friction creates delay. Delay becomes avoidance. But when the challenge is small, when it takes only a moment of courage, resistance loses its grip. Micro-challenges reshape identity because they show you proof. Every day you complete a small challenge. You give yourself evidence that you are capable of following through. You become someone who does difficult things on purpose. Someone who chooses growth over comfort. Someone who doesn't wait to feel ready. Identity shifts when evidence shifts, and micro-challenges provide evidence every single day. The examples are simple but powerful. Turn your shower cold for 30 seconds. Not because the discomfort itself is important, but because you teach your brain that you can choose discomfort voluntarily. Delay gratification by waiting 10 extra minutes before checking your phone. Not because the delay is long, but because you reinforce impulse control. Say no to something small you don't truly need. Not because the refusal is life-changing, but because you strengthen the muscle of self-discipline. Complete a short task you've avoided for too long. Not because the task is monumental, but because avoidance loses power when you face it directly. Each action is tiny, but each one builds strength. And like compounding interest in finance, the gains are invisible at first, then undeniable later. One day doesn't change your life, but 30 days can. The compounding effect of micro-challenges is psychological, behavioral, and emotional. Psychologically, you build a pattern of self-trust. You stop promising yourself you'll start tomorrow. You start proving to yourself that you can start today. Behaviorally, you create a foundation of discipline that supports bigger habits in the future. Emotionally, you develop resilience, the ability to tolerate discomfort without withdrawing or overreacting. Think of resilience like a muscle. You don't build it by lifting the heaviest weight on day one. You build it by lifting something slightly heavier than yesterday, over and over, until your capacity changes. The micro-challenge method works because it respects this principle. It doesn't overwhelm you, it strengthens you. But here's the most important part. Micro-challenges do not require motivation. They train you to act without it. This is the antidote to the myth of motivation we explored earlier. Motivation wants you to feel ready first. Micro-challenges teach you to begin regardless of readiness. This method works because it bypasses the psychological barriers that normally prevent action. Fear shrinks when it is confronted in small doses. Resistance weakens when it is challenged repeatedly. Your threshold for discomfort expands with each intentional practice. You become less reactive, less avoidant, less controlled by temporary feelings. You become more stable, more consistent, more grounded in discipline. People often underestimate the power of small daily actions because they imagine transformation must be dramatic. But dramatic change is often the result of quiet consistency. 5 minutes of discomfort each day is enough to reshape your identity in 30 days. Not because 5 minutes is long, but because 5 minutes is sustainable. And sustainable habits are the only habits that survive long enough to change your life. Imagine what happens after a month of micro-challenges. You begin to notice patterns. Tasks that once felt heavy now feel normal. Discomfort that once made you hesitate now feels manageable. Your confidence rises, not because you became stronger overnight, but because you survived a month of choosing discipline. You realize that you are capable of more than you believed. You recognize that discomfort is not a wall blocking you, but a door inviting you forward. This shift is profound. Micro-challenges help you see yourself differently. When you do small hard things daily, big hard things stop feeling impossible. You begin to trust your ability to adapt. You begin to trust your ability to follow through. You begin to trust your ability to grow. And that growing begins to feel like identity. Not something you attempt, but something you embody. Not something you hope for, but something you practice. The size of the challenge never mattered. The weight of the discomfort was irrelevant. What mattered was the repetition. What mattered was the choice. What mattered was the decision to take one small step every day, even on days when your motivation was nowhere to be found. This is the heart of the micro-challenge method. It's simple, it's small, and yet it is the single most powerful way to build discipline without relying on inspiration. This is how resilience grows. This is how identity shifts. This is how willpower is built, one intentional difficulty at a time. And now that you understand the foundation, it's time to take the next step. Not just choosing small challenges randomly, but choosing them strategically, aligned with your goals, your weaknesses, and the person you're becoming. Because the next stage of your growth requires direction. It requires intention. It requires a plan. Chapter 3. Strategic Discomfort. Integration. You've learned that motivation fails you. You've learned that micro-challenges build strength. Now comes the part most people never master, moving from random discomfort to strategic discomfort. Because doing a hard thing each day isn't enough. Anyone can force themselves into a cold shower or skip sugar for 24 hours, but real mental transformation happens when you begin engineering discomfort around your weaknesses, your habits, and your personal blind spots. This is where discipline stops being an accident and becomes a blueprint. Before you choose your daily challenge, you need to understand yourself, not in a vague, inspirational sense, but in a practical way. Where do you hesitate? Where do you procrastinate? What drains your energy the fastest? What triggers your avoidance? What do you talk about improving, but never actually touch? These questions reveal the pressure points of your character. And pressure points are exactly where strategic discomfort does its finest work. Think about it like training a muscle. If your legs are strong, but your core is weak, more squats won't fix the imbalance. You target the weakness, not the strength. Your discipline grows the same way. So start by noticing your patterns. When do you mentally check out? When do you choose comfort without thinking? When do you shrink yourself instead of expanding? Use these patterns as a map. Your daily hard thing should attack the habits that limit you, not the ones you've already mastered. Maybe your weakness is hesitation. You overthink simple tasks. You wait for the perfect conditions. A strategic hard thing for you might be sending one uncomfortable message every morning, applying for the job, requesting feedback, telling someone the truth you've avoided, not because you want to, but because the hesitation itself is the enemy. Maybe your weakness is emotional avoidance. You shut down when you feel overwhelmed. You internalize everything. Your hard thing might be 5 minutes of journaling every evening, writing down the truth you don't want to admit. Not to create a beautiful journal, but to confront emotions instead of storing them like explosives. Maybe your weakness is comfort inertia. You move slowly. You delay decisions. You fold under the smallest spike of discomfort. Then your hard thing could be a timed sprint of productivity, 5 minutes only. 5 minutes of unbroken focus on the hardest task of your day. This is the rule of 5 minutes, and it changes everything. The brain is wired to resist starting, not doing. Once you begin, inertia flips, activation energy drops, dopamine rises slightly, momentum replaces fear, all from 5 minutes. The rule of 5 minutes works because it hacks the basal ganglia, the part of your brain responsible for patterns. It gives your mind an easy entry point. No drama, no negotiation, just motion. And motion is the antidote to dread. Strategic discomfort isn't about proving how tough you are. It's about lowering the cost of taking action until action becomes your default state. It's about training your brain to stop flinching when it senses difficulty. But there's another side to this, the art of not overdoing it. Discomfort builds strength only when applied in the right dose. Too soft, and nothing changes. Too extreme, and you burn out, break down, and abandon the process completely. Think of yourself as a high-performance engine. Push too hard, too fast, and you blow the system. Push consistently with intelligent resistance, and you expand capacity without damaging the machinery. So instead of making discomfort a punishment, make it a tool. Choose hard things that stretch you, not crush you. Choose challenges that sharpen your awareness, not destroy your energy. If a cold shower leaves you mentally fried for the rest of the day, it's not strategic. If delaying gratification turns into constant deprivation, you'll eventually rebel against it. If your challenge pushes you into anxiety instead of healthy stress, you've crossed the line from growth to strain. Strategic discomfort respects your biology. It recognizes that your nervous system adapts in stages. It knows that resilience grows from repeated exposure to manageable difficulty. It uses the science of progressive overload to upgrade your mental bandwidth one level at a time. And that's why tracking matters. You can't evolve what you don't measure. You don't need charts or complicated apps. A simple notebook or note on your phone will do. Record the challenge. Record how you felt. Record whether it pushed you or overwhelmed you. Record where you hesitated, where you broke through, and where you fell short. Over time, you'll begin to recognize patterns. Certain hard things will drain you. Others will energize you. Some will feel impossible for a week, then suddenly become effortless. This is where growth hides, in the transition from struggle to normalcy. And every time something becomes normal, you shift the target, you increase the weight, you elevate the challenge, you expand the boundary. Not radically, not dramatically, just enough to keep your brain adapting. Strategic discomfort is a long game. It's not about surviving hard moments. It's about using difficulty as fuel for identity. It's about turning discomfort into direction, strength into habit, resistance into revelation. Because at some point, you stop doing hard things to prove something. You do them because they shape you. You do them because they move you closer to the person you're becoming. You do them because the old version of you was built on comfort, and the new version of you is built on intention. When you learn how to integrate discomfort strategically, life stops feeling like something that happens to you. You take control of the narrative. You take responsibility for your growth. You become the architect, not the passenger. And that's where true willpower begins, not with heroic bursts of strength, but with quiet, daily decisions to face the discomfort you used to run from. Now that you understand how to align challenge with purpose, the next step is amplification. Scaling your discipline using the tools, the communities, and the cognitive hacks that multiply your willpower beyond what you can do alone. Chapter 4. Advanced Willpower Amplifiers. There comes a moment in your discipline journey when willpower alone stops being enough. Not because you're weak, but because the brain isn't designed to function in isolation. Human beings evolved in tribes, systems, structures. We were built to thrive with reinforcement. Chapter 4 is where your discipline shifts from personal effort to engineered momentum, where you stop relying on raw will and start leveraging proven psychological amplifiers used by elite performers, high achievers, world-class athletes, and people who seem to move through discomfort as if it were oxygen. You've built the foundation. Now it's time to build the exoskeleton around it. The first amplifier is accountability, one of the oldest, simplest, and most powerful behavioral tools humans have ever used. Your mind can negotiate with itself. It can rationalize, postpone, justify, and sugarcoat almost anything. But introduce another person, and everything changes. When someone is watching, your standards rise. When someone is expecting something from you, you show up differently. This isn't weakness, it's wiring. Psychologists call it social commitment pressure. Once you declare an intention publicly, your brain develops an internal urgency to stay consistent with that identity. Break the commitment, and your sense of self takes a hit. Keep the commitment, and your confidence expands. That's why elite performers always have accountability loops. Athletes have coaches. Founders have boards. Writers have editors. Traders have mentors. Even monks have spiritual companions who question their discipline every day. You don't need a huge network. One person is enough. A friend who texts you each morning. A co-worker who checks your progress once a week. An online group where you log your hard thing every day. Some people take it even further by creating public dashboards, a simple sheet where your progress is visible to anyone who cares to look. It's not about showing off. It's about eliminating the escape routes your mind loves to hide in. Accountability turns your daily hard thing into a promise, not an option. And the more you honor that promise, the more powerful your identity becomes. But accountability alone isn't enough. You need to make hard things easier to begin, automatic even. This is where habit stacking enters the picture. Habit stacking works because the brain loves patterns. Once something is linked to an existing routine, resistance drops drastically. You don't need motivation to brush your teeth, or lock your door, or start the kettle. Those actions are baked into your neural architecture. So instead of trying to force a new behavior from thin air, attach it to something familiar. If your hard thing is a cold shower, make it the first thing you do after turning off your alarm. If your challenge is journaling, stack it onto your morning coffee. If it's an uncomfortable conversation you've been avoiding, stack it beside your daily lunch break. Put the new action in the shadow of something old. This works because your brain follows a loop. Cue, routine, reward. By placing your hard thing directly after a cue that already exists, your mind has no space to negotiate. It flows from one behavior into the next, like stepping stones across a river. Each one leads naturally to the next. Habit stacking is friction removal. And friction removal is the secret weapon of disciplined people. But there's an even deeper layer to this. Cognitive reframing. This is where You stop seeing discomfort as something to endure and start seeing it as something to harness. Most people treat hard things like punishment. They grip their teeth and suffer through them. But reframing alters the emotional weight of the experience. When the brain associates discomfort with purpose, effort becomes empowerment. Instead of thinking, "This is painful," you shift to, "This is me getting stronger." Instead of, "I hate this," it becomes, "This is building the life I want." Instead of, "Why is this happening to me?" it becomes, "This is happening for me." This isn't delusion, it's science. The prefrontal cortex interprets stress differently depending on the meaning you assign to it. Change the meaning, and the emotional response transforms instantly. Reframing discomfort removes the emotional drain. It stops suffering from feeling like sacrifice and turns it into investment. It replaces dread with pride. It transforms struggle into a sign of evolution. The people who grow the fastest aren't the ones who avoid discomfort. They're the ones who reinterpret it. And now we reach the fourth amplifier, environmental engineering. This is one of the most overlooked drivers of human behavior. You can have the strongest intentions in the world, but if your environment is designed for comfort, you'll always fall back into old habits. Your surroundings shape your discipline more than your motivation does. If your phone is within reach, distraction wins. If your room is cluttered, your mind feels scattered. If your workspace is chaotic, your energy drains before you even begin. If your kitchen is filled with junk food, your goals crumble by evening. Environmental cues dictate your choices long before your conscious mind gets involved. So you must design your world intentionally, not dramatically, strategically. Move temptations out of sight. Reduce visual noise. Create tiny obstacles between you and your bad habits. Remove frictions between you and your good ones. If you want to stretch your discipline, leave your workout clothes next to your bed. If you want to write each morning, leave your notebook open on your desk. If you want fewer distractions, place your phone across the room. If you want daily cold exposure, leave a towel by the bathroom sink. If you want deep focus, keep your desk impossibly clean. Elite performers treat their environment like a silent partner. They know it can either sabotage them or support them. They take control of every detail, not out of obsession, but out of respect for the truth. Environment is the invisible architect of behavior. When accountability, habit stacking, cognitive reframing, and environmental engineering come together, something powerful happens. Your willpower stops feeling like effort. It becomes momentum, a self-reinforcing loop, a system that strengthens itself every day. This is why elite performers don't rely on motivation. They rely on structure. They rely on systems. They rely on engineered discomfort amplified by intelligent design. This chapter marks the turning point. Your discipline is no longer dependent on emotion. It's no longer dependent on morning energy or mood or inspiration. You're building a lifestyle where doing hard things feels natural, expected, almost inevitable. And now that you've learned how to amplify willpower using external and internal tools, it's time to put everything together into something bigger. A blueprint, a personal operating system, a daily routine built around growth, challenge, and character. Chapter 5. The Psychology of Discomfort and Identity Shift. There is a moment in every discipline journey when something subtle but profound begins to change. It doesn't happen on day one. It doesn't happen because you finish a challenge or hit a milestone. It happens quietly, almost imperceptibly, in the background of your life. And it's this: you stop seeing discomfort as an enemy and start seeing it as evidence of who you're becoming. That is the beginning of identity shift, not the motivational kind plastered across social feeds, not the temporary kind that lasts as long as a New Year's resolution, but the real kind, the kind that rewires how you think, how you act, how you respond to yourself and the world. Human beings do not rise to the level of their goals. We fall to the level of our identity. And identity is shaped not by what you want, but by what you repeatedly do. Every time you take on a daily hard thing, your brain receives a message, not in words, in evidence, in data, in action. You're teaching yourself something new. I am someone who does difficult things. I am someone who shows up when it's uncomfortable. I am someone who doesn't break at the first sign of pressure. This internal message becomes the foundation of a new self-image. You can't fake it. You can't imagine it into existence. It must be earned through lived experience. And the more discomfort you face deliberately, the stronger that message becomes. What actually happens inside the mind when you do something hard? Psychologists call it the identity loop. It begins with a simple action, any action, no matter how small. The action becomes proof. The proof shifts belief. The belief alters behavior, and the behavior reinforces identity. One loop, one cycle, repeated over and over until your old self-image dissolves and a new one forms in its place. This is why small challenges matter so much. Not because the task itself is impressive, but because the act of doing it reinforces your emerging identity every day. It tells your brain, I am moving, I am trying, I am building, I am becoming. This identity shift creates something deeper than motivation. It creates pride. The kind of pride not rooted in ego, but in integrity. Pride from keeping promises to yourself, from showing up when it's easier not to, from watching yourself do what your old self would have run from. That kind of pride stabilizes you from the inside. It makes you less reactive, less insecure, less dependent on external validation. You begin to feel anchored, calm in the face of chaos, steady in the face of uncertainty. Because when you face discomfort daily, the world cannot intimidate you as easily. You've already seen what's inside you. You've already met the part of you that survives pressure. You've already proven, even in small ways, that you are stronger than your impulses. Identity shift is not just psychological, it's biological. Neural plasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself, favors repeated challenge. Every time you push through something uncomfortable, new pathways strengthen. Signals move faster. The prefrontal cortex becomes more active, improving your ability to regulate emotions and resist impulses. Your baseline stress tolerance increases. Your internal dialogue becomes clearer and kinder. You are literally shaping your brain to become more disciplined. This is why people who intentionally do hard things begin to walk differently, not physically, but energetically. There's a quiet confidence in them, a groundedness, a sense of self built from surviving their own resistance every day. They don't need to announce their strength. It radiates through the way they carry themselves. But something even more powerful happens beneath the surface. Discomfort begins to change how you interpret struggle in other areas of your life. Before, struggle meant you were failing. Now, struggle means you are growing. Before, resistance meant it was time to stop. Now, resistance means you are in the exact place where transformation occurs. Before, discomfort felt threatening. Now, it feels familiar, almost like a doorway. You start to realize that the people who seem naturally disciplined aren't special. They're simply comfortable with discomfort. They don't run from friction, they run toward it. And this mindset creates a dramatic shift in emotional stability. You become harder to discourage, harder to sway, harder to manipulate, harder to break. This inner stability isn't loud. It doesn't need to be. It's a quiet, profound trust in yourself, a trust earned, not imagined. One of the biggest psychological changes that occurs when you do hard things daily is the collapse of self-doubt. Not because doubt disappears, but because it loses its power. You understand that fear can exist while you still act. That hesitation can exist while you still move forward. That resistance can exist without stopping you. For most of your life, discomfort dictated your behavior. Now, you dictate the response to discomfort. And in that moment, identity shifts from reactive to intentional. But there's another layer, one that many people never reach. It's when the hard thing stops being something you do and becomes something you are, not an obligation, not a challenge, a definition, a truth. You become someone who expects more from yourself, someone who doesn't rely on the right mood or the right timing, someone who shows up even when the world feels loud or heavy or chaotic, someone who trusts their own resilience because they've seen it in action. This chapter is not about discipline for its own sake. It's about identity evolution, about watching yourself grow into a person you once believed only existed in theory, a person who is calm in discomfort, steady in pressure, grounded in chaos, resilient in uncertainty. You are not simply adopting a habit, you are becoming a different human being, a human being shaped by consistency, strengthened by friction, defined by the willingness to walk toward discomfort rather than away from it. The more you embrace discomfort, the more you shed the version of yourself that avoided life. The more you lean into challenge, the more you silence the voice that once held you back. The more hard things you do, the more your identity shifts into someone deeply, undeniably powerful. This chapter marks the moment when you stop asking, "How do I build discipline?" and start asking, "Who am I becoming through this process?" Because doing daily hard things is not about surviving difficulty. It's about constructing a new identity brick by brick, challenge by challenge, decision by decision. You are becoming the kind of person your future will thank you for. Chapter 6. Building Your Daily Hard Thing Playbook. By now, you've learned the science, the psychology, and the internal shift that emerges from doing hard things daily. But knowledge without structure fades, momentum without guidance collapses, and even the strongest identity will drift if it isn't supported by a system. Chapter 6 is where everything becomes practical, where you turn this philosophy into a routine that reshapes your days, your weeks, and eventually your life. This is your playbook, your manual, your structure for building mental toughness that compounds relentlessly. The first step is personalization. Not all hard things work for all people. Not because some are harder or easier, but because effectiveness depends on alignment. A good daily hard thing is one that meets 3 criteria. It must be uncomfortable, it must be controllable, and it must be meaningful. Uncomfortable means it pushes you outside your normal patterns. You feel the resistance. You sense the hesitation. You feel the tug of the easier path. That discomfort is the growth signal. Controllable means You can do it anywhere, regardless of circumstance. You don't wait for the perfect environment or the perfect day. Your hard thing must be something you decide, not something you chase. Meaningful means it connects to the person you want to become. If you want physical resilience, choose something physical. If you want emotional courage, choose something socially challenging. If you want discipline in your habits, choose something that transforms your routine. Your daily challenge should come from your weaknesses, not your strengths. Because the purpose isn't to impress yourself, it's to transform yourself. Once you identify those areas, the next step is building your weekly cycle. Most people fail because they treat challenges like a lifelong sentence. The brain rebels, resistance spikes, burnout takes over. But when you structure your discomfort in a weekly rotation, something interesting happens. Your mind sees variety, your identity sees progress, your habits see forward motion. A weekly cycle means choosing 7 categories of discomfort, one for each day. For example, Monday for physical discipline, Tuesday for cognitive challenge, Wednesday for emotional courage, Thursday for delayed gratification, Friday for social discomfort, Saturday for organization and structure, Sunday for reflection and intention. You can design it however you like. What matters is that each day has a designated area of discomfort, so your mind knows what it's stepping into. No guesswork, no negotiating, just a clear, predictable rhythm. But within that rhythm, you need a system for escalation. Because if your challenge stays the same forever, the mind adapts and growth slows. Progress happens when discomfort expands in small increments. Never too big, never too small. This is where the 3-level challenge scale comes in. Level 1, micro discomfort. Level 2, moderate resistance. Level 3, stretch discomfort. Level 1 is for days when energy is low, life is chaotic, or your mind feels heavy. Something small but consistent. A 2-minute cold exposure. Cleaning one corner of your room. Taking one uncomfortable action. The goal is maintaining momentum. Level 2 is your standard daily challenge. Noticeable discomfort. A deliberate push. The kind of action that makes your brain pause for a second and think, do I really want to do this? That hesitation is the indicator that you're in the right zone. Level 3 is for days when you feel strong, clear, and focused. A challenge that stretches you beyond what you usually choose. Not recklessly, but deliberately. Stepping into an unfamiliar environment. A longer cold exposure. A difficult conversation you've avoided for months. A task that demands courage. Your playbook is built around rotating these 3 levels according to your capacity, not your excuses. You don't need to do a level 3 every day. You simply need to push slightly beyond your comfort zone consistently. But even the best routine requires feedback. Without review, the brain forgets how far it has come. That's why the next piece of your playbook is the self-review system. Self-review is not punishment, it's clarity. It's the moment when you sit with yourself and ask the questions most people avoid. What was today's hard thing? How much resistance did I feel? How did I respond to the discomfort? What did I learn about myself? What will I escalate tomorrow? This reflection takes 2 minutes, but those 2 minutes are transformative because the brain learns faster when you reinforce progress, when you acknowledge resistance, when you recognize your own patterns. This is how you build self-awareness, a skill more valuable to discipline than motivation will ever be. Your self-review becomes a map of your growth, a record of your evolution, evidence that you're changing, even when you can't feel it day to day. Over time, something incredible happens. Your daily hard thing becomes less about checking a box and more about listening to yourself. Your resistance tells you where you need to go next. Your hesitation becomes a compass, and the discomfort you used to avoid becomes the signal that you're on the right path. But a playbook isn't complete without one final layer, a deeper structure, a way to turn this daily practice into a lifelong operating system for mental toughness. This layer is integration, allowing your daily hard thing to permeate every part of your life, not through intensity, but through awareness. You start noticing tiny opportunities to choose discomfort over ease, taking the stairs instead of the elevator, speaking truth instead of staying silent, finishing tasks instead of postponing them, sitting with emotions instead of distracting yourself, focusing when your mind wants to drift. Every choice becomes training. Every moment becomes a rep. Every discomfort becomes a chance to reinforce the identity you're building. You stop waiting for motivation. You stop relying on mood. Your discipline becomes a lifestyle, a reflex, not a struggle. And the playbook expands with you. Your weekly cycle evolves. Your challenge levels rise. Your identity strengthens. Your confidence grows. Your self-awareness deepens. By now, you're no longer someone trying to do daily hard things. You're someone living by a code, a personal system designed not for perfection, but for relentless growth. This chapter marks the shift from handling discomfort to mastering it, from reacting to resistance to using it, from discipline as a task to discipline as an operating system. And now, as we move into the final chapter, everything comes together, not as individual ideas, but as a complete philosophy, a blueprint for becoming the strongest version of yourself, built one daily hard thing at a time. Chapter 7. The Discipline-Driven Life. There comes a moment on every self-mastery journey when the mechanics stop feeling mechanical, the routines stop feeling forced, the effort stops feeling like a negotiation, and something subtle but seismic shifts inside you. You wake up one day and realize you're no longer trying to be disciplined. You simply are. This final chapter is about that transformation. Not the day-to-day grind, not the tactics and tools, but the person you become when daily hard things stop being exercises and start becoming your identity. You began this journey with a simple idea. Motivation is unreliable. You learned that waiting to feel ready is the fastest way to stay stuck. You learned that discomfort, when used intelligently, is not an obstacle, but a catalyst. Now, in this final chapter, we stretch the horizon wide and look at the long-term consequences, the decades-long ripple effect of embracing a discipline-driven life. Think about what discipline really gives you. Not punishment, not rigidity, freedom. The paradox is that the person with the strongest self-control often feels the lightest, because they're no longer weighed down by indecision, by regret, by unfinished promises, by the mental friction that torments most people every day. A disciplined person wakes with clarity. They move with intention. Their days are structured, not chaotic, and their energy, mental, emotional, physical, is directed instead of wasted. After months of daily hard things, something deep within your neural wiring changes. Neuroscientists call it long-term potentiation, the strengthening of synapses through repeated activation. But what it feels like is simple: strength. You feel yourself becoming someone capable, someone stable, someone you can rely on. You become proud of the person staring back at you in the mirror, not because they are perfect, but because they are consistent. Consistency is the real superpower of discipline. It is the trait that compounds faster than any investment on earth. One disciplined decision leads to another. One good day is built on the momentum of the one before it. And over time, those small daily commitments become the architecture of an entirely new life. This affects every domain you touch. In your career, discipline shows up as reliability, excellence, commitment to craft. Your output increases. Your skills sharpen. You stop waiting for direction and begin giving direction. Opportunities gravitate toward the person who consistently shows they can carry weight. Promotions, partnerships, trust, responsibility, they all follow discipline like a shadow. In your relationships, discipline shows up as emotional steadiness. You learn to respond instead of react. You develop patience, empathy, presence. You become someone others feel safe around. Someone dependable. Someone who can regulate themselves in difficult moments. Discomfort training strengthens your ability to stay calm under pressure, and that calmness becomes a gift you extend to the people you care about. In your creativity, discipline becomes the engine that carries ideas from inspiration to execution. Most people have dreams. Disciplined people have completed projects. They have prototypes, drafts, portfolios, finished scripts, launched channels, built businesses. Creativity is not lightning. It's a muscle. And discipline is more important than talent. In your physical life, discipline brings a sense of ownership. You're no longer controlled by cravings, impulses, or convenience. You begin to understand your body not as a burden, but as a foundation, an instrument you maintain because doing hard things has taught you the value of maintenance, endurance, and self-respect. And emotionally, the transformation is profound. You become more grounded. Anxiety loosens its grip because your brain is no longer conditioned to panic at discomfort. You've spent months training your nervous system to stay steady in situations that used to trigger you. You've learned that you can experience discomfort without collapsing beneath it. Confidence grows not from affirmations, but from evidence. Evidence that you can do difficult things even when you don't feel like it. That's the identity shift. That's the real reward. Not the habits, not the productivity, the person you've become as a result of doing these daily hard things. Identity formed through discipline is unshakable. It does not crumble when the world wobbles. It does not collapse in a recession or a breakup or a setback or a season of uncertainty. Because discipline builds internal infrastructure, mental scaffolding strong enough to bear the weight of life's unpredictability. This is why disciplined people feel free. Not because life gets easier, but because they get stronger. The world is full of people waiting for the right moment, waiting for the right mood, waiting for inspiration, for clarity, for courage, for a sign. A disciplined person stops waiting and starts acting. They are proactive instead of reactive. They move forward without needing perfect conditions. They understand that action creates clarity, not the other way around. And that ability to take action even when the emotional weather is stormy is the hallmark of someone who can shape their own destiny. So here we are, the end of the journey, but more importantly, the beginning of yours. Listen closely to this next part, because this is the true heart of this audiobook. Everything you want is on the other side of one small, difficult action. That's it. Not a massive life overhaul, not a heroic transformation. One hard thing, one moment of courage, one shift in behavior, one refusal to stay where you are. Your future self is watching you. 10 years from now, they will either thank you or resent you, and the difference will come down to whether you start today. Not tomorrow, not when you feel ready, today. So choose one hard thing, one challenge that stretches you just enough to make you uncomfortable, one act that signals to your brain, we are done living small, we are done waiting, we are becoming something more. Because discipline isn't a punishment, it's a declaration. A declaration that your life is your responsibility. A declaration that you are no longer controlled by impulses. A declaration that comfort will no longer be your ruler. A declaration that you are willing to build a mind that can withstand anything. This is your moment, the cinematic hinge point of your story, the turning of the page, the beginning of the chapter where everything changes. Start today. Start now. One hard thing, one decision. Build the life your future self will thank you for.